Exposed, the sinister haunted secrets of McDonald's night guard in Louisiana. 7 terrifying rules. Sarah had just stepped into the fluorescent-lit shrine of fast food when she felt that the air was thick, heavy with the weight of secrets longing to be shared. The previous guard had left her a jarring gift, a tattered note on the break room table, scrawled with 7 terrifying rules. She could almost hear those words echo as the flickering lights and rattling sounds of the empty kitchen played out behind her. It was just another night at the McDonald's in their otherwise safe suburban Louisiana town, but something was off. Very off. Darkness draped outside like a heavy curtain, and the cheerful yellow arches seemed to mock her, glimmering as if they held unspeakable horrors within. Sarah took a deep breath, adjusting her uniform with trembling hands. She'd always thought of this place as a safe hub, a corner of nostalgia where she and her friends once shared fries and laughter. But now it felt haunted. Shadows curled at the edges of her peripheral vision, and the fourth wall of the restaurant creaked like the spine of a ghostly specter. She turned towards the drive-thru, forcing herself to focus. That's when it hit her, the first sinister rule: never look directly at the drive-thru window after midnight. Why? Her heart pounded in her chest, the thought gnawing at her like a sledgehammer on fragile wood. As the clock ticked past 12 a.m., she felt a chill breeze sweep through, sending a shiver racing down her spine. No cars. Just an eerie silence until she heard the clink of metal against metal from the kitchen. She scanned the area. Nothing stirred. Days turned into weeks, and her son Jake started to withdraw. "I see him, Mom," he whispered, pale-faced and wide-eyed. "A masked guy. He watches me." She dismissed him, thinking it was just teenage paranoia. But the longer she worked at McDonald's, the more twisted her own reality became. She gripped the paper in her pocket, the rules etched sharply in her mind. Never turn off the fryer after hours, the second rule stated. Why? Was this all part of some sick game? Tonight, she felt it, a jolt in her stomach, creeping dread. She approached the fryer, flicking the switch nervously, and felt the shadows shift again. Her heart raced as the grease hissed, low and menacing. She had to know. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The hairs on her arms stood up. Rule after rule, they conjured a sense of doom. Avoid direct eye contact. She was gripped by terror, but also a strange curiosity. What secrets lay hidden behind the walls? The crushing reality of her small world began to close in, suffocating her. And just as she resolved to confront the chilling mysteries surrounding her night shift, a thunderous crash erupted from the break room, startling her to the core. Heart hammering, she raced toward the noise, every instinct screaming at her to run. What she found froze her in place, a shadow darker than the night, amorphous and writhing, pulsating under the faint bathroom light. She could barely think, barely breathe. And in that moment, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. Jake's voice broke through, tense and terrified. "Mom, it's here." Her throat constricted. What had she unknowingly invited into their lives? The atmosphere quaked, the safety she thought they had crumbled like the stale fries at her feet. They were no longer just meat and potatoes, this was survival. What had she invited home with her? The pulse of the haunted McDonald's was alive, and she was too late to escape its grip. The shadows pulsed as if they were breathing, a dark tide rising around Sarah. Panic surged within her as she stumbled backward, her heart hammering in a frantic rhythm against her ribcage. The vibration of her phone jolted again, but she couldn't focus on it. All she could see was that grotesque shadow morphing and twisting under the dim light, hungry and ready to devour the suffocating silence. "Mom, please. Where are you?" Jake's voice radiated through the fear gripping her. Was it just her imagination, or had the shadow turned slightly, as if it were listening to him? Jake! Stay in your room! She shouted back, the urgency in her voice barely masking her rising fear. She took a hesitant step forward, yearning to comprehend this monster born of her nightmares. It slithered closer, a grotesque apparition composed of swirling darkness that seemed to suck in the flickering light. Back away! She screamed, the words bursting from her lips in a desperate plea. Her instinct screamed to flee, but something about the shadow riveted her feet to the ground, corded her heart with dread, binding her to the macabre mystery surrounding her. The freezer door slammed shut suddenly, echoing through the pale emptiness, and her body jerked at the sound. Sarah weighed her options. Did she follow the rules? Or did she take a risk? Rule 3 flashed through her mind, never approach the friar after hours. A sickening realization hit her. Could the friar be a conduit? What if it wasn't merely a friar but a doorway? Suddenly, her thoughts spiraled into chaos. The grease hissed, and a rancid aroma filled the air, taking root in her throat. She had to divert her attention for a moment, look away from the shadow in a desperate bid to gather her thoughts. With trembling hands, she fumbled her phone from her pocket and pressed it to her ear. Jake, stay on the line. Don't hang up. But all she received was heavy silence. The relentless thrum of her heart drowned out everything else. Sarah turned back to the shadow. It wriggled closer, as if it could sense her dread. It formed into a more defined shape, a humanoid figure with a mask just like Jake had described. A low hiss replaced the soft whirring of appliances, reverberating in a horrifying melody. Now, it felt like it was speaking in a language all its own, revealing unspeakable truths. Suddenly, the light flickered violently, and Sarah's instincts kicked in. Adrenaline surged through her, demanding she act before the night swallowed her whole. She rushed past the shifting darkness, her heart racing in rhythm with the pounding of her feet on the floor. The break room seemed to close in, walls pressing against her as she shouted, "Jake, I'm coming home." She needed to escape this place, to protect her son. But as she grabbed the door handle, another crash thundered through the back of the restaurant, sending shivers up her spine. It was almost as if the building itself was coming alive, rebelling against the presence that lingered within its walls. "Mom!" Jake screamed, his voice suffused with terror. It shattered her concentration. The rules haunted her, paranoia slithered through her mind. Had she followed them closely enough? What if breaking one had unleashed this entity? A crack echoed through the air, and without thinking, Sarah dashed toward the drive-through window. Against everything, she peered out, feeling the icy breath of the unseen thing wrapping around her. The darkness outside wasn't empty. The masked shape loomed, waiting with quiet menace, eyes gleaming, a grotesque promise of horror waiting to spill into her life. She could feel it beckoning her closer. What was this thing? Why was it here? And how long until it found Jake? With resolve edging into desperation, she mustered the strength to face her fears. If the rules hadn't saved her, then maybe the truth would. As shadows danced maniacally, twisting and contorting, she prepared herself, fueled by a burning question: what if the rules were only the beginning? Then, just as she turned back toward the kitchen, she noticed something glimmer. Something sharp caught in the light near the fryer, something the entity didn't want her to find. Her heart pounded even louder as she stepped closer, knowing she was crossing an unseen line. But what was the truth hiding in the darkness? And would it split her world apart? The glimmer drew Sarah in, its metallic surface shimmering ominously in the dim light. She could feel the cold sweat forming on her brow as she approached. The shadow seemed agitated, writhing violently as if aware of her intentions. She peered down to see what looked like a knife, its blade stained, its handle almost warm beneath her fingertips. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. Could this be a way to fight back? Her mind raced. But then, the awareness swept over her: a knife would not sever the ties of darkness that engulfed the diner. The entity wouldn't be deterred by mere metal, it was ancient and primal, feeding off fear, and she was its feast. Jake's frightened voice sliced through her thoughts. "Mom! Please! I'm so scared." The desperation in his tone was a knife of its own, stabbing through the fog of terror wrapping around her chest. She dropped the knife, her resolve crumbling. "Jake! I'm coming. Just stay in your room." The entity seized on her distraction, pushing its amorphous body closer, its features sharpening into grotesque clarity, a face that wasn't human but bore the pain of 1,000 souls. Sarah's stomach twisted, the sight igniting a primal fear. She backed away, heart racing. The walls of the restaurant seemed to close in, pulsating, trapping her in this waking nightmare. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed again, this time near the kitchen. "No," she whispered. The fryer a potential doorway to what? Did it seek to unveil the hidden truths, or was it a mere trap? With a sudden clarity, the rules came rushing back. Rule 6 reverberated in her mind: never invite them in. Hadn't she done just that by stepping forward, by trying to comprehend this horror? The shadow paused, flickering momentarily. In that heartbeat of stillness, Sarah summoned her courage. She had to take control not just for herself, but for Jake. If she could confront the darkness, she could keep it from feeding on her son's fear. "Show yourself!" she shouted, determination lacing her voice. The flickering lights above reacted, flashes growing more intense, illuminating the grotesquerie of the figure. It seemed to swell, morphing, its limbs stretching absurdly. The hiss subsided, replaced by an eerie whisper that seemed to sound like her own name. "No!" she cried, but the words slipped into fear. What was it trying to say? In the throes of despair, a flicker of hope sparked within her. The flickering light seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heart, guiding her toward the fryer. What if it truly was a gateway? "Jake!" she called again, pushing past the looming fear. "I'm coming. Stay safe, baby." Desperation washed over her. The shadows lunged, crashing against the room, elongating toward her. Each movement felt like fingers grazing her skin, a warning that made her just want to curl up and hide, and yet, she wouldn't turn away. She grabbed onto the fryer, its surface slick and cold against her palms. The air inside the diner turned frigid, and a deep rumble echoed through the building, rattling her bones. Whatever was calling forth from the fryer trembled in a sinister dance. As the shadows shivered, Sarah took a deep breath. What if breaking the rules was the only way to survive? With newfound desperation, she pulled on the fryer door, flinging it open. Smoke billowed out, acrid and thick, enveloping her senses. She could feel the darkness shifting, trying to curl itself around her. And then, like a perverse magician's trick, out of the smoke came a face, a familiar face. "Mom." Jake stood in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide and terrified, the shadows crawling up his legs, eager to consume him. "Jake! No!" she screamed, lunging toward him. But the very fabric of reality felt like it was tearing apart. The shadows coiled, intertwining with her movements, pulling her backward. In that moment, Sarah could see the truth beneath the surface. The darkness held secrets of the past, whispered regrets and memories trapped within its depths. And tangled within the mystery was Jake, a light flickering in the abyss. What was the price of unearthing secrets and facing horrors too large for comprehension? Time slowed as Sarah reached for her son, but the dark tide thickened, dragging her away. Would they be pulled into the horror together? Or would she have to sacrifice everything to save him? As the shadows writhed around them, Sarah's heart raced with both fear and determination. What were they willing to risk to escape that cursed night? The moment hung heavy, fraught with dread. They had awakened something. But what would they discover if they embraced the terror? "Jake!" Sarah cried again, panic rising in her throat like bile. The shadows were not just lurking now, they were alive, and they were hungry. The darkness hissed, swirling tighter around her, pulling her back like a relentless tide. She stumbled but planted her feet, rooted by the force of her love for her son. "I'm coming. She reached out, fingers trembling as she fought against the darkness encasing her. The shadows flickered, flashes of faces and screams flashing in her peripheral. Every breath felt thick with dread. The shadows twisted, slithering up Jake's ankles. "Mom!" His voice trembled, tiny in the overwhelming cacophony of terror. The entity, now fully taking shape, advanced, twisted limbs elongating, jagged and sharp, like claws ready to embrace their prey. "Hold on, Jake!" she shouted, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to find a way to save him, to save them both. A glimmer of the knife's blade lingered in her mind, recalling the fleeting moment when she had thought of it as a weapon. But now, it seemed futile. The truth crashed against her, this was more than a physical battle. "Jake!" She lunged, desperate to grab him. The shadows shivered, as if sensing her resolve, hissing in discordant whispers that clawed at her sanity. "Stay with me." The dark mass lunged forward, and dread washed over Sarah as it opened what might be its mouth, a void that echoed with tortured wails. In that moment, she understood the truth of the diner, that this ancient entity fed on fear, relishing each scream, each soul it devoured. And now, it was hungry, zeroing in on Jake's terror. "No. Not my son." With sheer willpower, she stepped forward, forcing a breach through the swirling shadow. The cold air shot through her, biting, chilling every part of her. The shadows recoiled slightly, sensing her unwillingness to cower. "Stop. You can't have him." Her voice rang out, emboldened by the rush of fierce maternal instinct. Each shout silenced the shadows, even if only for a heartbeat. "Mom, what is happening?" Jake's question was almost drowned in the chaos. His small frame trembled as he looked around, vulnerable in the weight of the darkness closing in. In that split second, Sarah felt a tingling sensation within her, like electricity sparking through her veins. The memories of her past, of her fears, her regrets rose like specters within her. Each one held a truth, marked by sorrow, pain, and guilt. The shadows quaked at her determination, seeking to feed. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, drawing every piece of strength she could muster, the warmth of her love creating a barrier against the icy touch of the shadows. "I'll fight you to keep him safe." The entity recoiled, letting out a mournful wail that rattled the very structure of the diner. The lights flickered wildly, illuminating the grotesque figures within. They looked at her with eyes that mirrored her own fears, twisting and reshaping, reflecting the terror she had run from. The flickering grew more violent, sending a wave of motion through the shadows. The friar's smoke began to swirl faster, becoming thicker, darker, as though summoning something from the depths that had been trapped within. "Mom!" Jake's voice broke through, a thread of pure panic. The shadows lunged again, faster this time, eager to take what they thought was rightfully theirs, but behind them, something shifted. "Stay back." Sarah held her ground, feeling oddly tethered to the friar. She could sense a connection forming between her will to save Jake and the chaotic energy swirling around them. The entity surged, twisting to lash out at Jake, its elongated limbs flashing like lightning. Sarah could feel the pull of the darkness beginning to weave around her, but now she was not just held by fear, she was fueled by the urgency of love. With a fierce cry, she reached toward the shadowy mass. The truth emerged. The shadows thrived not only on fear but also on the anger and pain she had kept hidden. "I refuse to let you take him. I am strong." The shadows recoiled, as if her anger cut through them like a knife, and for a moment, the darkness hesitated. A sliver of light beckoned from the friar, offering a glimpse into a world beyond the pain, a world of potential freedom. "Hold on, Jake. We can do this together." But just as she felt the spark of hope surge, the shadows lashed out, reclaiming their throne of darkness. Time slowed again, and Sarah braced for the impact, knowing that the true test was about to begin. What would she have to confront in order to pull them from this abyss? Were they ready to unlock the secrets that the shadows so desperately guarded? As reality teetered on the brink, Sarah understood that finding the truth would come at a cost, one that could shackle them to the horror forever. The shadows writhed, seeming to pulse in time with Sarah's racing heartbeat. Each flickerings of light exposed faces twisted in agony, silently pleading for release, and with every jolt from the dark mass, she felt the weight of their despair, as heavy as lead pressing down on her chest. The air crackled with tension, a storm brewing around the diner's stifling interior. "Jake, hold on!" Sarah called, her voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon. Yet her words felt fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering. She could see him, frightened and small, slipping further into the maw of the abyss. Cold tendrils snaked around Jake's waist now, pulling him down into darkness. She could see the panic in his eyes, bright as a lighthouse in a storm. "Mom! Help me!" He was slipping, his tiny body faltering in the grip of shadows that seemed unyielding, unbreakable. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Each word she spat out sharpened her focus, urging her forward. She pushed deeper into the chaos, her resolve burning hotter than the chill of the shadows surrounding her. The diner floor cracked beneath her feet as if the building itself recoiled from the battle unfolding within its walls. "Jake!" She screamed again, the sound almost drowning in a cacophony of tortured shrieks. The shadows whispered lies, taunting her weaknesses, whispering secrets that twisted within her mind. "You can't win," they hissed, "you've never been strong enough." But those words infuriated her. Each accusation fueled her, lighting a fire in the pit of her stomach. "You're wrong. You're nothing without fear. My pain, my regrets, they don't belong to you." The darkness hesitated again, shuddering at her defiance. Sarah felt the energy shift, as if the shadows were reconsidering their tactics. Were they sensing her strength? Her love for Jake ignited, and slowly, she channeled it. Behind her, the friar hissed ominously, transforming into a reactive ally. Dark smoke began to rise, swirling around her arms like a tempest, forming a barrier against the tides of despair. "We'll use this!" she yelled, gritting her teeth. She willed the very shadows that had entrapped them to fight against one another, her heart racing as the darkness flickered and danced. "Mom, please!" Jake's voice cracked with fear, and a sudden jolt of urgency blasted through her. She could see it now, an opening, a chance to drag him from the precipice of doom. Just a little more. Gritting her teeth, she clawed at the shadows, feeling their icy fingers graze her skin. But she wouldn't let them take him. Not now. "Join me, Jake. Fight!" she ordered, as much for herself as him. The shadows recoiled a fraction, sensing her spirit, her relentless, protective love. If they were feeding off fear, she had to give them something else. Suddenly, a chilling howl ripped through the diner, as if the entity realized the balance was tipping. The noise threatened to crush them, a million voices shrieking through the walls, and with it came a new wave of desperation. The shadows lunged with renewed vigor, surging toward them. They wanted to overwhelm her, to swallow her whole, dragging both her and Jake back to the depths of despair. But she saw it clearly now, all it took was to believe in love, in strength, in their bond. "No!" Sarah yelled, and with that declaration, she pushed against the tide. The shadows convulsed, their power wavering, and what felt like chains binding them began to unravel. She saw Jake's small hands reaching toward her, hope flickering in his wide eyes, then, all at once, the diner erupted in light. The friar burst open, pouring a blind light that forced the shadows back, skittering away like frightened rats. Sarah felt warmth flood around her, consuming the cold dread that had long held her captive. "Mom!" Jake shouted, and as the shadows fell back, she leaped forward, grasping his hands, their fingers clasping tightly, but as they embraced, a shadow claw crept back, a trailing darkness reaching for them both. Just when they thought they were free, something ancient stirred. Awakening with a low growl from the depths of the friar, darker than any shadow they had faced. "Is this really over?" Sarah whispered, the certainty of safety fleeting like the last flicker of light in a dying bulb. What had they awoken? And were they really ready to face the horrors that loomed just beneath the surface? The light from the fryer pulsed, carving out fleeting shapes in the darkness that still clung to the walls. It felt alive, thrumming with a dangerous energy, as if tentacles of pure malevolence stretched towards them. Sarah's heart raced, each beat a desperate drum urging her to act. She gripped Jake's hand tighter, fear etching deep lines across her face. "What is it?" Jake whispered, glancing back toward the shadows that skittered away, but not completely vanished. His small voice trembled, full of raw dread. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her throat constricted. "But we need to keep moving. Stay close." As they stepped back, the shadows writhed, their movements almost sentient, as if they were plotting their next attack. Sarah felt the cool air shift, eager to cling to them, eager to claim what it had nearly consumed. "Mom, what did we wake?" Jake's wide eyes mirrored the terror that thumped in Sarah's chest. She didn't dare look back. They might find more than they bargained for. A sudden crash erupted behind them. The diner doors blasted open with a force that rattled the very glass in its frames. The scent of burning oil and raw fear filled the air, and a chilling wind swept through the entryway, carrying with it echoes of lost souls. "Run!" Sarah urged, pulling Jake forward. The diner's familiar layout twisted into a labyrinth of darkness as they navigated their way through. An unsettling quiet filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of something scraping against the metal behind them. They dashed past tables upturned from the earlier chaos, food scattered and becoming cold remains. Each glance back deepened the pit in her stomach, shadows hungrily coiling, whispering words of hopelessness and despair. "Mom, I'm tired," Jake panted. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes, making Sarah's heart clench. "Just a little longer, buddy," she encouraged, though the knot in her gut warned her they might not make it. "Keep your eyes forward. Focus." They stumbled into the kitchen, the fluorescent lights flickering ominously overhead. The shadows danced, looming larger as they spread across the tiles. A heavy pot swung from its chain above, banging against a wall in an erratic rhythm, echoing the panic that played within Sarah's mind. Suddenly, a deep growl reverberated through the room, resonating in Sarah's bones and causing the hair on her arms to stand on end. The shadows coalesced, morphing into something colossal and grotesque, a maw overflowing with jagged teeth lined against an abyss of nothingness, yet it had form, a shape that wasn't entirely defined. "Look out!" Sarah yelled, pulling Jake behind her, shielding him as best she could. The creature lunged, darkness swallowing the light like some monstrous beast wanting to consume them whole. She fumbled for anything she could use to defend them, grabbing a metal spatula, feeling foolish yet desperate. But within her, a spark ignited a potent conviction that they could survive. "Stay back. I want to let you take him," she shouted, voice trembling but fierce. The creature froze, as if her words had pricked its newfound hunger, its shadowy form momentarily flickering as the light from the fryer flared brighter. "Mom! What do we do?" Jake shouted, panic bubbling over. "Hold on to me," Sarah commanded, gathering every ounce of courage she could muster. They needed to break free of the confines, but could they truly escape the depths of this malevolence? As she lunged toward the exit, the shadows writhed in protest. The weight of their despair pressed against her back, and voices clawed at her sanity, desperate to taunt her resolve. The beast writhed, and the walls of the diner closed in, ready to trap them forever. Will they escape the grasp of darkness, or will the shadows claim what's left of them, devouring their hope and love? The thought hung like a blade, cold and dripping, as the struggle between light and dark began in earnest. "Let us go," Sarah shouted as they pushed toward the doors, the howl of the shadows alive behind them, a ghastly chorus. Would her bravery be enough against something so relentless? The answer lingered just beyond the threshold, waiting. They burst through the diner doors, the sudden rush of outside air mixing with the bitter taste of fear still lingering on their tongues. Sarah's heart pounded violently, her mind racing as she pulled Jake away from the threshold. The diner's familiar neon sign hung above them, flickering wildly as the shadows howled within. Why would they open like that? Jake gasped, glancing back. He was still shaking, unable to process the dread that had just licked at their heels. Sarah felt his fear rip through her, but she had to be strong for him. I don't know, but we're not safe yet. They moved into the parking lot, broken dreams and oil stains scattered beneath their feet. The air outside was thick, an unsettling calm that overshadowed the chaos they'd fled. Sarah's skin prickled. It felt as if the very world around them was holding its breath. Mom! Jake's voice cut through the silence, high and terrified. The shadows, they're out here too. Her breath caught. She turned slowly, scanning the dim outline of the diner and the surrounding lot. The darkness clung to the corners, fingers of shadow extending like they belonged, writhing and creeping toward them. I don't know what to do. I just want to go home, he whimpered, and in that moment, Sarah's heart both twisted and cracked. She didn't have a home to offer him anymore. Not if this thing was out there. Something shifted, a flicker just beyond the diner's glow, and she felt a tug deep within her gut. A car revved nearby, its engine humming ominously, and Sarah turned back toward the lot, her instincts honed ready to fight for their survival. Stay close to me, she commanded as they crept toward a rusted sedan parked haphazardly at the edge. As she approached, a voice, eerily soft, curled around her thoughts. It floated through the air like a whisper, feeding off their confusion, a chorus of lamenting souls mingling with the gentle rustle of the wind. Help us, did you hear that? Jake whispered, eyes wide and glistening with tears. I did, she replied, every word feeling like an incantation summoning that which they tried so hard to escape. Just keep moving. They climbed into the car, hearts racing, seeking shelter within metal walls that felt more like a cage. Sarah fumbled with the lock, her trembling fingers barely managing to click it into place. He's still out there, isn't he? Jake muttered, the weight of his small voice pressing against her. Yes, she affirmed, a lump rising in her throat. But we'll find a way. As she glanced at the rearview mirror, something black and formless caught her eye. The shadows were pooling closer, slithering along the pavement, hungry and intent. The engine sputtered. Sarah yelled, no, no, no. As she yanked the key, praying for it to start. It wheezed and popped, but the more she turned, the more it resisted, as if the vehicle itself knew they were not meant to escape. Nothing. The shadows inched nearer, their whispers growing deafening. Let us in, panic surged through Sarah. Her chest tightened. Jake, get ready. With a final twist, the engine roared to life, the sound reverberating like a gunshot. The shadows recoiled momentarily. Sarah slammed the gear into reverse, the tires screeching against the asphalt, but just as she was about to accelerate into the night, a figure materialized in the rear back seat, all dark eyes and twisted grins, a nightmare fabricated from their fear. Let us in, get out. Jake screamed, the air grew thick, closing in around them, the voice reverberating in the confined space. Welcome home. With a surge of raw terror, Sarah kicked the gas, sending them careening into the night, but with each mile, the weight of the shadows clung harder, forcing the question, could they truly escape? As they sped away, she could hear the laughter echoing in the distance, chilling her to the bone, taunting her as they vanished into the dark. Mom, where will we go? His words hung in the air like a death knell, the darkness ready to envelop them once more. She gripped the wheel tighter, determined, but even as she drove, she could feel something unnatural creeping close, whispering not just from outside, but from within, you can't escape, you belong to us now. The headlights cut through the darkness like knives, illuminating the winding road ahead. But with each turn, Sarah felt as if the shadows were creeping closer, wrapping around the car like a suffocating vice. Her breath came in quick gasps, each exhale mingling with Jake's soft whimpers in the back seat. Make it stop, Mom, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I can't take it. I know, she whispered, the words barely leaving her mouth as a chill settled in. Try to stay quiet. But how could they remain silent when the air was thick with torment? The whispers swirled in a chaotic dance, swirling around them, a grotesque symphony. Sarah could hear them clearly now. Help us, help us. It was as if the voices were alive, gnawing at her resolve, beckoning her to turn back, to return to the diner and whatever horrors lurked within. What are they? Jake asked, his curiosity overshadowed by fear. Are they what we saw? She swallowed hard. They're just shadows. They can't hurt us. But even Sarah sensed the lie in her own words. Shadows at that moment felt far more real than the ground beneath her feet. The road stretched into nothingness, each mile seeming to elongate. Panic swelled inside Sarah as she stole glances in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty once more, but the memory of that twisted grin haunted her. It was all too clear they weren't done with them. Not yet. What if they follow us? Jake's question dripped with dread. We'll find a way to lose them. Just hold on. The moment she spoke, she felt a jolt in the car, as if they had hit something. Sarah slammed the brakes, the car skidding violently to a halt. Heart racing, she looked about. Nothing was in sight, but the darkness seemed to pulse around them, threatening to engulf them whole. Did you feel that? She asked, her voice trembling. Yeah, Mommy, I'm scared. Before she could respond, a shadow crawled across the windshield. It was no longer just a silhouette. A form materialized, pressing its face against the glass, dark and twisted, features indistinguishable. Eyeless sockets stared through the glass, depths of nothing but rage and despair. Let us in. The entity's voice echoed as a chill shot through Sarah. Go, go. She screamed, and with shaking hands, she turned the key while simultaneously throwing the transmission into drive. The engine revolted but roared back to life, lurching them forward. Look out! Jake shouted, pointing. Through the blinks of oncoming light, they saw a massive tree branch protruding from the side of the road. Sarah swerved sharply, narrowly avoiding a collision, the speedometer needle twitching dangerously as the car spun onto the gravel shoulder. Mom! The shadows! Jake pointed behind them. In the rearview mirror, a swarm of dark shapes lifted from the ground, thick and swirling like a storm. They howled and writhed, lunging toward the car as if eager to consume them. No! Sarah screamed, her foot slamming against the gas again, heart thundering, trying to escape the very essence of fear that seemed to be chasing them down, but as they sped away, Sarah felt something else, a pull, a connection that made her heart race in a different way, calling her back to the very dark they had fled. Can't resist, she murmured, her voice trailing off as reality twisted around her. They ripped through the darkness, but ahead, a small flickering light reflected off a lone sign, McDonald's. No way, Sarah breathed, dread creeping in. What is it? Nowhere safe, just a trap. Jake's eyes widened with realization. We can't go there. But it was too late, the allure glowed brighter. Something sinister lay within, the very thing calling her home to the darkness that refused to let them go. As they hurtled toward the illuminated sign, questions raced through Sarah's mind. Would they find salvation, or were they driving straight into the jaws of hell? And then, in the grips of the awful truth, she realized, we have to face it. But as the shadows surged behind them, she wasn't sure who would emerge from the conflict, or if they'd make it through at all. The McDonald's loomed ahead like a warped beacon in the night, its fluorescent lights buzzing erratically, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. As they drew closer, Sarah fought against the violent tug of something deep inside her, something that wanted to turn back and turn up the radio, drown out the whispers that had chased them this far into the night. Mom, I don't like this. Jake's voice trembled, reminding her of the terror they had just fled. What if they're waiting for us? His words shattered any feigned bravado she tried to maintain. This wasn't just a restaurant, it was a trap, cloaked in the false safety of familiarity. Yet the shadows encroaching from behind demanded an answer. She could almost hear their tortured cries now, desperate and hungry. As they closed the distance, with wild resolve, she swerved into the parking lot. Gravel crunched under tires as they came to a sharp stop, the engine rolling into a hesitant purr. The interior of the car was heavy with a suffocating silence, a stillness that hummed with dread. Outside, the night seemed to lean in, cloaked figures flitting just beyond the edge of the light. "Stay close to me," she ordered, heart pounding as she unlatched her seatbelt. She glanced at the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of writhing shadows gathering into a thick veil, eager to spill over them like an ocean wave. "Mom, please." Jake's eyes were wide, his small hands clenching the edges of the seat. Steeling herself, Sarah stepped out into the night. The cool air wrapped around her like icy fingers. She turned back to Jake, who was still hesitating. "You need to come with me." Together, hand in hand, they stepped towards the glowing doorway. The flickering sign buzzed overhead, casting elongated shadows that danced menacingly at their feet. The door creaked open, welcoming them into the oddly familiar, yet sinister space. Inside, the temperature dropped further. The once vibrant fast food aroma had soured, replaced by an overwhelming stench that radiated dread. Empty tables stood like dark sentinels, and the lights flickered, creating a pulse that synced with Sarah's racing heart. "Is anyone here?" she called out, voice strained, echoing hollowly. No answer came, but she could feel it, the sensation of being watched. Jake tugged at her sleeve, his face pale. "Mom, I feel sick." Before she could reply, a loud crash erupted from the kitchen. They both jumped, their eyes wide with terror. "Stay here," she whispered fiercely, kneeling to be level with Jake. He nodded, teeth gritted. Quietly, she moved towards the sound, the shadows behind her whispering secrets she dared not comprehend. Each step felt heavier, as if the darkness conspired to weigh her down, to trap her within its abyss. Pushing through the swinging door to the kitchen, she was met with cold silence. The grease-slick floors glimmered in the flickering light, and the equipment was covered in a fine layer of grime. Shadows flitted in the peripheries of her vision, and she could just make out what looked like figures hunched over near the fryers. "Jake!" she shouted, fear slicing through the silence. She spun around, heart racing as she instinctively shielded her son. "Get out! Now!" But as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous finality. She pounded against it, panic flooding her veins as she pushed against the wood. "Help!" But her voice only echoed back, taunting her. Jake grasped her hand tightly, eyes glistening in terror. Suddenly whispers filled the room, angry and distorted, drowning her in overwhelming despair. "Help us! Finish what they started." They were trapped, surrounded by those who had come before them. The walls quaked, and the figures in the shadows shifted, their features swirling into grotesque faces, mouths forming silent screams. "What do we do, Mom?" Jake whimpered, tugging at her as despair mounted, and in the moment of impending horror, Sarah caught sight of something on the ground, a faint light shining through the cracks in the tiles. It pulsed rhythmically, beckoning her closer, offering a glimmer of hope or perhaps a more sinister temptation. "Mom!" Jake's voice trembled, uncertainty palpable in the air. "Hold on to me," she breathed, torn between terror and whatever lay ahead. Just then, the kitchen lights flickered one last time, plunging them into complete darkness. In that void, the shadows surged forward, their whispering voices blending into a chilling chant. "You're ours now." Within the depths of her mind, she knew they were not just looking to escape, they were being summoned to find something promised. But what would it demand in return? As dread enveloped them whole, she realized one final truth: they had crossed a threshold, igniting a confrontation that would unearth their darkest fears. Just what would they face next? And could they ever truly escape it? Sarah's heart raced as darkness enveloped them like a suffocating shroud, desperate whispers clawing at her sanity. She squeezed Jake's hand tighter, feeling his small frame tremble beside her. This was no longer just about survival, it was about confronting the shadows that had haunted her for far too long. "Stay close," she urged, her voice a fierce whisper cutting through the suffocating silence. The pulsating light beckoned her, a flickering promise of hope amid the despair churning around them. But she knew better than to trust the siren call in this wretched place. With determination fueling her, she took a cautious step toward the glowing beacon. The whispers intensified, a symphony of agony and desperation circling like vultures. "Help us finish what they started," the voices echoed, taunting her, flickering shadows morphing into grotesque forms that twisted in the dark. "Mom, I don't like this." Jake's small voice broke through her resolve. She turned to him, his eyes wide with fear. In that moment, she felt a sharp pang of sorrow and anger at the shadows' cruelty. They had taken too much already. "Whatever happens, don't let go of my hand," she said fiercely, pulling him close. "We will face this together." Drawing in a shaky breath, she pressed forward, her heart thudding loudly in her ears. The pulsing light beckoned, and as they approached, the ground beneath them shifted, sending a quaking tremor through the air. The shadows thickened, swirling like a storm ready to unleash its fury. Suddenly, the light burst into brilliance, illuminating the kitchen in stark clarity. Within its embrace lay the truth, a circle of gathered shadows, their forms now visible, trapped in a timeless dance of agony. Their hollow faces turned toward Sarah and Jake, mouths silently screaming, eyes filled with a desperate longing. "Finish it!" They all cried out, a wave of fury and sorrow crashing like a tidal wave. The weight of their grief bore down on Sarah, but she wouldn't let it drown her. She couldn't get back. She yelled, the heat of maternal instinct igniting her fury toward the darkness. With a fierce scream, she lunged forward, the glowing light surging around her. "You will not take my son. You don't own us." The shadows recoiled at her defiance, wavering as if she had pierced through their veil of despair. They twisted and shrieked, the cacophony rising, echoing through the empty diner. There was power in her voice, power in her refusal to yield. "Jake! We need to do this together," she called, feeling his hand grip hers tighter. "Remember what we talked about, the way we faced the dark corner of your room? This is just like that." Jake nodded, determination flooding his little face. "Together, Mom." In that moment of clarity, Sarah felt the truth wash over her. The shadows thrived on the weight of their fears, the darkness feeding on guilt and regret. To break free, they had to confront the pain. They had to face what they feared most within those dreaded walls. Gripping Jake's hand, Sarah called out into the chaos. "We demand your truth. We won't be shackled by your anguish." The shadows hesitated, and for one shuddering instant, the light grew stronger, forcing back the veil of darkness. But the entity struck back, its shadowy tendrils lashing out like angry serpents. "Stay close. Don't let go." She charged forward, pulling Jake with her, invoking the strength of their bond. Their shared willpower flickered brighter than fear, illuminating the depths where darkness painted despair. Suddenly, something shifted within the shadows, a faint glimmer, as if the past clinging to them was revealing its heart. Haunted faces began to emerge, flickering memories woven into the very fabric of that cursed place. As they pushed through the darkness, images solidified, quick flashes of the grim history, tormented souls seeking closure, trapped by the very shadows that preyed upon their fear. "Help us," they chanted again, yet this time, their voices were softer, less menacing. "Finish what they started, free us, let go of your pain." Sarah shouted, feeling the weight of their sorrow pooling around her heart. "You don't have to keep suffering. You can move on." Their raspy voices blended into a harmonious cry, a wave of remorse crashing over the remnants of the restaurant like waves against a rocky shore. The flickering light pulsed, growing brighter, and Sarah felt a surge of compassion and hope swell in her chest, overpowering her fear. "Jake!" she shouted, urging him onward, feeling the connection between them strengthening. "Let us help them find peace." Jake squeezed her hand, eyes wide with understanding, and together they stepped into the whirlpool of shadows. "We forgive you. We let you go." With those words, something shifted, an unseen barrier broke, and the darkness exploded in brilliant light, shadows unfurling and dissipating like smoke in the wind. As the blinding radiance swallowed them, the figures faded into the light, finally free. Then, silence. They stood amidst the remaining remnants of the diner, the oppressive weight of darkness lifting like a fog. The air felt lighter, vibrant with renewed life. Sarah and Jake clung to each other, breathing in relief, as the booth and the friars glimmered with fading shadows, remnants of a battle fought and won. Jake looked up at her, his features softening. "Mom, did we really win?" She smiled through tears, running a hand through his tangled hair. "I think we did, buddy. They're free now." The flickering sign outside glowed brightly, casting cheerful yellow hues across the remnants of what had become a sanctuary of despair. This McDonald's, long a symbol of comfort, reclaimed its place as a warm beacon of their shared memories. "Let us go home, Jake," she said softly, holding his small hand in hers as they stepped outside together into the brisk night air, leaving behind the shadows, and forging a new beginning. A new chapter awaited them together. They would face whatever lay ahead, with the certainty of love and strength as their guiding light, and as they walked away, the last vestige of darkness whispered its final wishes, fading back into the abyss from whence it came. Hey everyone. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help us reach even more fans. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. What did you think happened to the shadows? Let's get talking. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. This community thrives on your support, and only true fans understand the importance of these actions. Let us keep the stories coming.